Hey everybody, welcome back. Glad you guys could join us today. Today is the webinar for Are You Exempt from the ELD Mandate? First of all, we want to give out a quick shout out to all the veterans that have served for the country. Midwest Truckers definitely appreciates everything you've done for us and everything those actively serving will continue to do. So thank you for your service and for the opportunity for us to do what we do today. So. Many of you know the ELD mandate is coming December 18th. It is a huge issue within our industry, trying to understand who's exempt from it, who's not exempt from it, who has to do e-logs, who doesn't have to do e-logs. So for you to truly understand if you're exempt or not from the ELD mandate, first you have to understand if you have to do logbooks or not. According to FMCSA, logbooks are the standard, meaning when you're operating a commercial motor vehicle, you are to log your time when driving, operating, or working that commercial motor vehicle. Logbooks are the rule. There are exemptions to the rule of logbooks. And to understand if you're exempt from the ELD mandate, you first have to understand if you are exempt from the actual logbook requirement. You can take exemptions whenever you choose, but you don't have to. So understanding where that falls under the hours of service regulations is the very first part of understanding if you're exempt from the ELDs or not. So the base of operations with ELDs comes in December 18th, and you have to know if you're going to operate under them or not. So first you have to understand that your logbook operation is and how you keep your logs is most important. So first we're going to go over the exemptions within the logbook rule, which is 395, and then we'll go over the actual ELD exemptions that are part of the ELD rule. So as logbooks are being the standard, anyone who drives a commercial motor vehicle over 10,001 pounds is required to keep a logbook. If you qualify for exemptions listed in 395, then you don't have to keep a logbook. The first one that we commonly hear about is the short haul exemption. We actually find many people are logging on the short haul when they don't actually have to, but that is a choice. The short haul exemption is separated into two different sections when you're operating under that. There's the CDL and the non-CDL. Specifically for this video, we're going to talk about the CDL operations, which is the operations of motor vehicles over 26,001 pounds in combination with more than 10,000 in tow, or more than 26,000. So for CDL short haul operations, you are allowed to operate from your place of business or from your normal dispatch location within a 100 air mile radius when you cross state lines. Many people don't realize you can actually utilize the short haul exemption in hours of service and cross state lines. You are allowed 100 air miles from your place of business in a radius all the way around your business, where your truck sleeps at night. That's the easiest way I assimilate that to certain people, is where your truck goes to sleep and wakes up, where you start and stop it every night. That is your that is the locale that you can draw that 100 air mile radius crossing state lines. That is the federal rule, and you get actually 112 land miles when you're operating under the short haul. The big catch with short haul, a lot of people don't get correct, is that you have to start and end your workday within a 12-hour period, and you get 60 hours to operate in the short haul during the week. So as you start and stop your workday within a 12-hour period under a 100 air mile radius crossing state lines, you are able to claim the short haul exemption, which means you don't have to log your entire day, which in turn keeps you from having to use the graph. If you're not using a logbook to record your hours of service, you are not required to have an ELD. That's why operating under the short haul will allow you to do that. Now, if you are operating under a 100 air mile radius, and you cannot get your workday done in a 12-hour period, you have to log that day the moment you realize that you're not going to be able to complete it in a 12-hour period. So if you're at the end of your day and you realize you're not going to get in at the end of 12 hours, you're going to have to go back and recreate that entire day under a logbook graph event to be able to qualify, and that is going to become an logged event. Now, we'll talk about how many of those you can have before you have to go to the ELD, but first you have to understand that's the short haul. Since this video goes out all over the country, probably all over the world, and thank you to everyone that watched our last video, the 100 air mile exemption works in every state under FMCSA rules. Now, certain states do allow you to operate at 150 air miles when you don't leave their state. Illinois is one of those states that you can operate in 150 air mile radius under the short haul. This is CDL operations, and be able to start and finish your workday within 12 hours. That is the short haul exemption. If all of your work is under the short haul, can qualify under the short haul exemption, and you can just keep timesheets in your truck or in your place of business, you are not required to do ELDs in your truck. It's not going to be required of you. So keep that in mind if you choose to operate that way. Any other exemption listed in 395 is part of that. Another one that's a big exemption that exempts a lot of carriers is the agricultural exemption. We did a webinar on that yesterday. I didn't spend a lot of time talking about the ELDs in the ag exemption because I wanted you to understand the ag exemption in our last video. So if you didn't catch it, you can go back in our news feed, grab that last video, learn a little bit more about the agricultural exemption, how it works, and anytime you can operate completely under the 150 air mile radius of the agricultural exemption, meaning all your loads are under that 150 air mile, you're operating within a state that allows you to, that is in their harvest or planting seasons, you are not required to keep a logbook. So if all you do is haul grain 75 miles away and your state is a year-round harvest planting season state, then you're never going to have an ELD, ever. It's not a problem for you. So if you're operating under an hours of service exemption, then you're all the time, then you're never going to have an ELD. That is one of the big questions we always get. Well, I'm hauling, short range, or it's a little more than, or I'm crossing state lines. If the agricultural exemption will work for you, if the states that you're operating in, when you're hauling in them or in the harvest season, and you can get all of your work done under 150 air mile radius, then you're going to be exempt from the ELD mandate. Big question that pops up on the agricultural exemption, well, what if I'm going beyond the radius? If you cannot operate within the radius, then either you qualify for less than 8 days and 30, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute, or you're going to have to run a logbook or ELD, depending on your equipment. This is where this ELD gets really confusing for a lot of people. So agriculture, short haul exemption, those are all available. Short haul for non-CDL also applies. Even though you're not driving a semi-truck or a 26,000 pound single-use truck, you still are required to do a logbook. Now, there are non-CDL short haul rules. Those are a little bit different. You get a little bit longer workday and you get a little bit wider radius. I'm not going to talk about those because people get them really, really confused. But a good handbook to understand what basic exemptions you will qualify for is the FMCSA Driver's Guide Handbook. It's actually a good document coming from FMCSA, although we question a lot of the stuff that comes from. This one's actually pretty good in being able to explain to you the difference between CDL and non-CDL short haul operations. So now we're kind of really into the meat of what is qualifiable. Sorry, I'm running two screens here, so if it looks like I'm dancing off to one side or the other, it's probably because I am. So the first exemptable part of the ELDs is if you log less than 8 days out of any running 30, then you are exempt from being required to have an ELD in your trucks. The thing a lot of people confuse is what if I've got some trucks that are short haul all the time and some trucks that are long haul? The ELD technically follows the driver in a way. So it doesn't really follow the truck because hours of service follow a driver, not a truck. So if you've got some drivers that are short haul and all they do is short haul and all they run is short haul, then they'll never have to have an ELD in their trucks because that driver never utilizes the hours of service when they're logbooking. They utilize a short haul exemption. If you've got 4 drivers that are over the road all the time, then yes, they're more than likely going to, unless they qualify for another exemption. So ELDs are not fleet-based. They are based basically on the driver's hours. Each driver's hours will dictate, you know, in their driving scenario, what they will be required to do if they're required to run an ELD. Then it ties back to the equipment that they're driving. So yeah, leave it to FMCSA to make this complicated. So, but back to, if your driver logs less than 8 days out of a running 30, this is not a calendar month. I get that question a lot. Hey, you know, at the end of December, I'm going to run for 7 days, and you know, then at the very first week of January, I'm going to run for 4 days, and then I won't run again for 2 months. You know, so then I'm going to be less than 8 days out of the month. That's not correct. It's kind of like recapping, and I don't even want to get started on recapping. We may cover that in another video sometime. But you have a running 30 days. So when you take your first logged event, you have 30 days. You can do 7 more until that first day drops off. And then you can pick it back up on the backside of the 31st day. That's how that running 30 works. You get 8 loggable 24-hour periods. This is not a per trip. It's a loggable 24-hour period. So you have 24 hours to log that block, and you can do that 8 times out of a month. If all of your drivers can do that, or you as a driver can do that, make sure that all your logged events, either you're operating under an exemption, oil field exemption, short haul exemption, any of the actual exemptions that exempt you from operating under a logbook, then you won't have to run an ELD. Another exemption that's out there is drive-away, tow-away operations. This one's recently gotten changed, and I'm going to pull it up, and it's on FMCSA's website. Drivers that conduct drive-away, tow-away operations where the vehicle being driven is the commodity being delivered, aka dealers driving trucks that they're selling or delivering, or the vehicle being transported is a motorhome or recreational vehicle with 1 or more sets of wheels on the surface of the runway. Where this one came from, we don't know. Still haven't gotten a direct answer from FMCSA as to why people who are hauling campers are exempt from ELDs, but they are. So if all you do is pull campers around for camper manufacturers to dealerships, guess what? You're exempt. You don't have to have an ELD. Why, we don't know, but congratulations to you. So if you're pulling campers for money, for hire, or campers period, in those operations, you will not have to have an ELD in your truck, and you can run on paper logs. If you're a dealership that's moving equipment, and what you're moving, or a tow company, and what you're driving is the actual commodity of what it is you're doing, then that vehicle will not be required to have an ELD in it. You can basically paper log that event if you're a dealer. So that is another one of the major exemptions that are out there. And if anything I say, you guys have questions, be sure to shoot me a quick note. I'll be watching those, and I'll answer those as they come through. So another issue, here comes the fun one that everybody is really, really struggling with within the industry. Drivers of vehicles manufactured before the model year 2000. Okay, going to take a breath here because this gets even more complicated once we get started. The simple part is, if you operate a truck that is titled and registered as a 1999 or older, it is exempt from ELDs, period. No questions asked, but the value of a 1998 International Cab offer has almost tripled since the ELD mandate has come into play. So if your vehicle is titled and registered as a 2000, but it was manufactured in 99, it is not exempt. It is not exempt. It is a model year 2000. It is required to run an ELD if you don't qualify for any of the other exemptions. So Scott threw out there, livestock drivers are not exempt. They have not gotten their exemption from the feds yet. They do not have their 1-year extension. They got it through the House, still sitting in the Senate. That exemption has not been extended at this point. So livestock drivers, unless all of your operations run under the 150 air mile radius of the ag exemption, or you go beyond the 150 air mile radius less than 8 times out of 30 days, you will be required to run an ELD during the times that you are operating under logbook requirements. So we're going to go jump right back into model year 2000 trucks. Model year 2000, got to have an ELD. Doesn't matter if it was made in 1999. 1999 titled trucks don't have to have ELDs. 1998, 1974, 1936 does not have to have an ELD. Here's where a lot of the challenge comes in, is that recently FMCSA has decided in the middle of July-ish, August, they decided they've been bombarded with issues about glider kits. So FMCSA issued a FAQ on glider kits. Are glider kits exempt from ELDs if they have a pre-1999 motor in them? Up until July, August, no, they were not exempt. You had to have it because it was the model year, it was titled 2007, and you had to have an ELD. Well, they changed their mind. So now, if you read the regs, the FAQs, they state, if you can document that the motor that is in your glider kit is a 1999 or older, and you can see that on the VIN stamp of the motor, then you are exempt from the ELD mandate. This just made roadside a whole lot tougher. So what we've been recommending, so let me repeat myself. If you're driving a glider kit, doesn't matter what year the model year the glider kit is, if you can document that you have a pre-1999 engine in that glider, and it is the VIN stamp shows very clearly from the manufacturer that this was manufactured in 1999 or earlier, then you will be exempt from the ELD mandate. It doesn't matter if it's a 2017 glider kit. You are exempt from the ELD mandate. We recommend from Midwest Truckers that you take a picture of the VIN number, get a printout of that VIN documentation, and keep it with your logbook if you're choosing to operate ELD exempt under that. So that is the big catch right now. They've also got some other really confusing parts in there on pre-99 stuff. One of the ones that we have submitted a request to is that if you have a glider kit that has a remanufactured Detroit engine in it, even though that engine when it was remanufactured under the glider kits, you need to, Detroit remanufactures them, so it may be, say you got an 07 glider kit, you had a 98, got an 07 glider kit, has a remanufactured Detroit engine in it. It was a 98, but then you remanufacture and put in a glider. It was remanufactured to 98 specs, but now Detroit restamped it as a 2007. This is not clear from FMCSA, but I am hearing in recent conversations that Detroit is issuing documentation on those remanufactured engines that they were remanufactured to pre-99 specs. Is law enforcement going to accept that roadside? I don't know. Some of the real challenges is you can literally have two exact same 2017 Peterbilts sitting right next to each other at the scale house. One's a glider kit with a pre-99 engine in it. One is a brand new order truck, and law enforcement's not going to be able to tell the difference. So you're sitting there, one truck's running ELD and one truck isn't. There's some real serious concerns with law enforcement on roadside. So you need to try and document as much as you can. Like I said, take a picture of the VIN of the motor if it's a pre-99. Keep it with your logbook. Keep it with a printout that states, you can get them at the dealership where they print out, decode the VIN number of the engine so that it shows that it's a 99. Because a lot of times, particularly here in Illinois, not all officers who are doing roadside logbook checks can actually go under the hood of the engine because they're not certified to do that level of inspection. So they have no way to know. So it's best that if you're going to be carrying a logbook and you don't want to get that non-ELD compliant ticket, then you need to make sure that you have that picture of that VIN and the printout of it stating that that's what this is. Also, if it is a glider kit, if you have anything in there that states that this was a glider kit, some states title their trucks as glider kits, some states do not. Anything you can document that is a pre-99 engine in that titled and registered post-99 truck is going to give you at least somewhat of an advantage on the roadside. But roadside wise, that is getting really, really tough. Now there has been, and those are essentially the basic exemptions from ELDs. Troy Smith threw out local grain. As long as you're not traveling beyond the 150 air mile radius if you're claiming the ag exemption during harvest seasons, or you're not going beyond the local, for a lot of local grain haulers, it's sometimes easier just to do short haul exemption and operate 12 hours a day, keep your timesheets, and if you're running local, you won't have to run ELDs. So that's really the basics of what's going on out there with ELDs. There's really nothing more to it. There's some spins on, what if I do this, or what if I do that? No, it's, if you don't qualify for an hours of service exemption, where you are doing logbooks, then you won't, then you'll have to have ELDs. It's that simple. Even if you're hauling livestock and you're bouncing in, like we talked about yesterday, livestock or grain or seed or feed under the ag exemption, and you're bouncing in and out of those radiuses, if you're logging between point to point, if you do that more than 8 times out of a month, you're going to have to run an ELD in those situations. So that is, the way it's going to happen. So the other issue we see a lot in the office is that people are logbooking things that they don't need to be logbooking. Short haul, the biggest one I see all the time. Why are you logbooking short haul? Well, it's just easier because we're tracking our miles. You're going to have to change your mode of operation if you don't want to operate under the ELDs. You can continue. You can keep running logbooks on short haul if you want, but you're going to have to run an ELD and operate them under an ELD device. When we talk about ELDs, a lot of guys get this confused too. FMCSA has a very specific set of requirements of what is an ELD. If you're just running a logbook app on your phone, it's not tethered to the truck, then you are not running an ELD. You are running a logbooking app. You have to run a device that is connected to the truck. The ELD has to know when the vehicle's running, how fast it's going, and engine runtime. Those are the things that it needs to know, because a lot of people get this confused with just a logbooking app is going to suffice. That is not going to suffice whenever you're operating an ELD. So, but those are the basic exemptions. I'm going to run through them back real quick so you understand what they are. Drivers who use paper rods for not more than 8 days, rods is records of duty or logbooks, out of every 30-day period. Boom. Drivers of vehicles manufactured before 2000, if it's a 99 or older, titled and registered, 99 or older, you're exempt from ELDs. Drivers who conduct drive-away, tow-away operations or pull campers, they're not required to run an ELD. And then obviously pre-99 manufactured engines running in newer glider kits are not required to run an ELD. Roadside, what's going to happen? I have no idea. I can tell you that the law enforcement community is nowhere ready for this type of exemption nightmare that's out there. The best thing I can tell you to do is, if you're running a new ELD system, FMCSA literally came out 2 days ago and said, hey, you should probably run your paper logs next to your ELD, because you know law enforcement isn't quite ready to handle this, because they haven't even got the pieces put together for law enforcement to be able to download your information if you're going to send it via telematics. So has anybody got any questions on exemptions? Am I missing something? Do you have something out there that that you're curious about that maybe hasn't been explained to you very well? Shoot me a quick note right now. I'd love to answer it for you if you're curious about that, or if you've got a question on it. But the big thing is understanding what exemptions you qualify if you're not wanting to run an ELD. If you understand what exemptions you qualify, you can operate under those exemptions and not have to run an ELD. We find a lot of people think that they're running under short haul exemption. They're filling out a logbook, they're filling out the graph, but then they're writing their time started, time ended, total time worked. When you hand that to a law enforcement officer, you just handed them a logbook. You are not running under the short haul exemption. you are running a logbook because you graphed your day. If you complete that graph, you are running a logbook. It doesn't matter what else you do. If you are completing a graph, you're running a logbook. So if you're running in short haul and you want to keep track of your hours, because you may jump out, once a week, you may make that run, and you can make that run as long as you log less than 8 days out of 30. You're gonna have the ability to record your short haul hours down in the remarks of your logbook. Record them right down there, saying time started, time ended, total time worked. Make sure you put total time worked. Everybody, you got to do the math for law enforcement. They're not going to add it up for you. And then the day that you need to start logbooking, on that day, you just start a logbook. You don't have to go back and recreate a log for all those short haul hours. That's where everybody makes a mistake. You are not running a logbook. You're only required to keep logs of those logged events. So, Lou, Jaeger's got a question. Is there going to be any leeway for breaks? Trying to find a place but stop and they can't. Hazmat already has that, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And unfortunately, this is some of the problems that we're going to see out here, is that you're going to have to plan your routes so that you've got plenty of time to stop and take those breaks. Again, it's going to come down to the enforcement officer. If you can prove, somehow show them that you haven't exceeded your allowable hours, I hope most law enforcement officers are going to be complacent to that. Ryan Frank asked a great question. How are they going to know if you're running 8 days on a full 30? You nailed it, man. If you get audited, you're hammered, but they can only ask for the last 8 days, today plus the previous 7 days. So roadside, they're not going to know. Here's where they may catch you, though, because I know a lot of local law enforcement, a lot of you guys are running out of the same places over and over again. They see your truck enough times and they stop you and you're running paper logs and they know where you're coming from and they know where you're going. What they can do is they can report you, and that can trigger an audit faster than what you realize. So a lot of people are thinking, oh, I'm just going to run paper logs and say, hey, I'm running short haul, all that before. Remember, they're going to be asking for supporting documents when you're running that ELD or not running that ELD. So if you happen to mess up and hand them some load sheets, when you were falsifying logs, that's what they're going to get you on. So we don't recommend it at all. But Ryan makes a very good point that I think a lot of law enforcement is concerned about, is that they don't have the ability to know if you're doing anything. But they do know that if they see you enough times, they can report you, and I guarantee you DOT will come make a visit. So keep that in mind. If you think you're going to push the limits, we don't recommend it. ELDs are here. They're going to happen. FMCSA obviously is trying to make that the #1 priority, to get them out there and make it happen. Unfortunately, what we're going to see, what we've already seen, is a huge amount of exemptions. There are a number of industries that have requested FMCSA to exempt them. We don't know if they will or not, but there's literally just a pile of requested exemptions from large truck, like the Hub Group has recently asked, UPS asked in the past. There's pork producers are asking. You name the group. Transport carriers are asking. The other question out there is, what about bad weather? If they're making choice for themselves, they don't want to chance the clock, they have to go. They're not. It's the same scenario that you have today. If you're in adverse conditions, you get that extra 2 hours to safely navigate. You're going to have to prove they're in adverse conditions. So, you still get that same adverse condition issue out there. But it's the 2 hours, just like the logbooks. All ELDs do is they're an electronic version of the logbook. So that's kind of where it is. Could it still be thrown out? Joe's asking. It's down to Trump. If Trump decides he's going to throw it out, sure, it could happen. Do I anticipate that to happen? No. I don't see it actually happening at this point. They have thrown so much at it to make this ELD happen. This is going to be a big issue for you. So any other questions out there? Again, the exemptions are pretty basic once you understand what you're doing with logbooks. basic logbook exemptions apply to the ELD mandate. So if you're not required to logbook with what you're doing today, you won't be required to do that later. The only difference is FMCSA says they haven't changed the rules, but they did change the rules when it comes to the ag exemption and how it applies. Even though, I'd caution this very carefully. I've spent a lot of time in the last 24 hours responding to a lot of livestock haulers whenever they're talking about this. Even though you qualify for the ag exemption from your source, if you're going beyond that 150 air mile radius more than 8 times out of 30 days, you are going to have to run an ELD unless you're running a pre-99 truck. So just keep that, or 1999 or older truck. Do you have to have documents in hand if your glider kit is exempt? I recommend it. Is it required? No. FMCSA even says it's really not required for you to have, but they ask you to have as much supporting documentation to give the officer to make that determination roadside to prove it's older than 99. So I can't say. I mean, we actually informed Illinois State Police that the pre-99 motor glider kits are actually exempt. So that's, Illinois State Police pretty well up, especially commercial vehicle division. They are pretty well up on the regulations. They're some of the best officers out there that I've met as far as understanding. When we're talking about CVOs, I'm not talking about all of them, commercial vehicle officers. And there is just so many changes from day to day with these regulations. But today, this is what it is. If we don't have any more questions, I'm going to wrap this up. We'd love to keep doing a few of these videos. There's lots of issues out there that we know you guys have on this. If you've got some suggestions, we're going to be looking at those. A quick question on this one: logbook fines, are they going to stay the same as they are for logbook violations? Yeah, I think they are going to stay the same. I mean, right now they are staying the same. The only thing that we've got out there that I didn't mention on, I want you guys to be aware of too, is that everybody says, oh, we're exempt until April 1st. No, if you are not running an ELD and are found that you need to after December 18th, between December 18th and April 1st, you will not be put out of service, but you will receive the citation. It's not a severe citation on your CSA, but it is a citation that will reflect on your safety score, and it is going to have an impact. We can go over some more details maybe next week on what you're required to carry, because your form and manner may go out the window on ELDs, but there's some other technicalities that are important to understand. Whenever you're running the ELD, you've got to make sure you have other things in place, like you have to have an instruction manual with your ELD. You have to have 8 days of paper logs with your truck if you're running an ELD. So keep that in mind. As always, thank you guys again. We appreciate all your support. Thank you to the veterans for what they've done for us. And hopefully we'll see you guys soon. Thanks.